The world is a masterpiece of marble and light, a gilded cage where the sun never seems to set. For 2 centuries, humanity has lived under the benevolent gaze of the gods, celestial beings who descended from the heavens just as the fires of old-world ambition threatened to consume the earth. They promised peace, and they delivered it, a hollow, silent peace that tastes like dust. In the heart of the capital stands the Great Library, a monument to a history written by the victors. Here, Elias spends his days. He's a humble archivist, a man of shadows and silence, moving through endless corridors of records that celebrate the divine salvation. But for Elias, the silence is heavy. It carries the echoes of a family lost to the purification rituals, those terrifying moments when the gods reclaim souls deemed too restless or too vibrant for this perfect world. His father was one of them, a man who vanished into the white light of the shining celestial spire, leaving behind nothing but a void and a nagging sense that the world was built on lies. One afternoon, while reorganizing a restricted sector of the ancient, dusty basement, Elias felt a draft where there should have been a solid wall. Behind a crumbling shelf of forgotten data pads, he found something that shouldn't exist, a physical object. It was a journal, bound in weathered dark leather, its pages yellowed and fragile from 200 years of neglect. As he opened it, his heart hammered against his ribs with violence. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was his father's. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. As Elias turned the brittle pages, the words he found didn't speak of a dying race saved from certain extinction. Instead, they spoke of a civilization on the precipice of a breakthrough. Humanity hadn't been failing. They had been ascending. They were developing a technology, a spiritual and scientific fusion known as the hidden spark that would have allowed them to transcend their physical limits and touch the stars as equals to the divine. The mistake was not humanity's near destruction, but the gods' arrival. They hadn't come to save us. They had come to stop us. The journal detailed how the gods had watched from the void, terrified that a mortal race was about to surpass their own power. The 200-year peace was actually a state of forced stagnation, a cosmic quarantine designed to keep the human spirit from evolving. This spark was the one thing the gods feared most, and they had spent 2 centuries pruning the brightest minds like weeds in a garden. As Elias read, a shadow fell across the page. It was Lyra, a creature of duty and doubt, a low-ranking divine servant whose silver eyes reflected a conflict she could no longer name. She had seen him find the book. Elias expected her to summon the guards immediately, but she hesitated. He saw the way her hands trembled, the way she looked at the spire with awe and secret revulsion. She had witnessed their hidden cruelties, the chilling coldness behind the divine masks, and in that moment, an unspoken alliance was forged in the silence of the library. Their moment was shattered by a familiar voice. Elias's supervisor, a man he had trusted for a decade, stepped out from the darkness. There was no warmth in his eyes, only the cold satisfaction of a hunter who had finally cornered his prey. He revealed the crushing truth. He hadn't been a friend, but a spy for the Divine Guard, secretly assigned to watch Elias's bloodline for years, waiting for the inevitable spark of rebellion to flicker. The betrayal cut deeper than any divine decree. As the heavy boots of the Divine Guard echoed in the hallway, Lyra acted, shoving a heavy cart into their path. Elias gripped the journal and bolted, leaping into the dark vents that led toward the Undercity. As he tumbled into the grime and shadow of the forgotten world below, the truth burned like fire in his mind. The gods were not immortal masters. They were merely parasites, feeding on the unimaginable potential of a race they were too terrified to let grow. Far above, in the heights of the spire, High Inquisitor Malachor watched the feeds. a predatory smile crossing his face as the hunt began. The Undercity was a labyrinth of rusted steel and weeping concrete, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection above. Here, beneath 2 centuries of lies, Elias and Lyra moved through the skeletons of a civilization that had once dreamed of the stars. They passed shattered subway cars and murals of a world that was vibrant and alive. Elias saw the true scale of what had been stolen. Humanity hadn't been a chaotic mess in need of saving. They had been architects of wonders the gods had simply paved over. Lyra touched a rusted girder, her fingers tracing with longing sadness. She had served beings who claimed to be the pinnacle of existence, yet here was evidence of a spirit that refused to be contained. The silence of the Undercity wasn't the hollow peace of the city. It was the expectant silence of a tomb waiting for resurrection. They walked past ghosts of iron. High above in the celestial spire, Malachor watched through thermal sensors. To him, humans were not people. They were a biological resource, a crop that had developed a sense of self. He found their resistance quaint. The High Inquisitor was ancient, his eyes glowing with stolen radiance. He knew the bitter truth Elias was only beginning to grasp. The immortality of the gods was a brittle illusion, maintained by a vile process called harvesting. Every time a human felt joy, sorrow, or the surge of creativity, that energy known as the spark was siphoned away through the very atmosphere the gods had purified. They were cosmic scavengers, growing fat on stolen dreams. Malachor decided the time for observation had ended. To draw Elias out, he sent fire to the surface. Elias watched as a beam of celestial light incinerated his childhood village in a silent flash. The archive of his memories was gone in seconds. It wasn't an act of war. It was a gardener pulling a weed. The grief that surged through Elias was cold and sharp, accompanied by a terrifying realization. As he wept, the air around him hummed, a resonant vibration that made the journal in his pack glow with pulsing light. His pain was power, and the gods were hungry for it. In the flickering ruins, Lyra finally spoke her truth. She pulled back her sleeve to reveal ancient circuitry interwoven with flesh, silver veins pulsing in rhythm with her heart. She was a hybrid, a desperate attempt by the gods to synthesize the spark. They were failing, she whispered, their own essence decaying. They needed human DNA to survive, but they couldn't control the fire they were trying to steal. Lyra was proof that the gods were not just afraid of humanity, they were dying without them. She led him to a forgotten bunker where a machine from the old world sat in dormant defiance. It was a pulse emitter designed to sever the connection between the spire and its atmospheric siphons. But there was a catch. The energy required would collapse the structural foundations, burying everyone. As Elias adjusted the dials, he found a final entry in his father's journal. His father hadn't died in a ritual. He had led the first resistance, captured while trying to ignite this weapon. He was executed for his courage, leaving Elias to finish a war frozen in time. The ceiling erupted as the divine guard descended. Malachor appeared through the dust, his presence a suffocating weight. With a casual wave, he neutralized Lyra, her hybrid systems seizing. He didn't kill Elias. He wanted him to watch. As they dragged Lyra away, Malachor leaned in, his voice a cold whisper. The great reset was coming. The gods had decided this generation was too tainted. They would wipe the earth clean and start over with a submissive, hollowed-out species. Elias stood alone in the wreckage, the weapon heavy in his hands and the fate of a dying race now resting solely on his weary, trembling young shoulders. Knowing that the clock was ticking, the darkness of the ancient subway tunnels felt like a protective shroud, shielding Elias from the artificial eyes of the gods patrolling above. He moved through these subterranean veins of a forgotten era, guided by charcoal maps his father had bled to preserve. The air was thick with damp iron and the weight of centuries. a sharp contrast to the sterilized perfumes of the Golden Age. Each step through the echoing ghosts of rusted transit cars was a journey backward, leading him toward the foundation of the celestial spire. This wasn't just a building, it was a needle piercing the earth, a parasitic monument siphoning the lifeblood of human potential. When Elias breached the inner sanctum, the opulence was physically painful. High Inquisitor Malachor stood at the center of a vortex of stolen radiance, the spark of 1,000,000 humans dancing around him like terrified fireflies caught in a web. Lyra was there, suspended in a stasis field, her silver skin flickering as her hybrid systems groaned. Malachor did not reach for a weapon. He simply smiled with the arrogance of a being who believed he had outlived time itself. He dismissed humanity as a chaotic species requiring a master's hand to avoid self-destruction. But Elias did not flinch. He held the journal high, telling the Inquisitor that their perfect order was nothing more than the silence of a graveyard. Lyra's eyes met Elias's, and she found the final piece of her humanity. She realized her hybrid nature was never a bridge for the gods to cross, but a tether to pull them down. With a scream of mechanical screeching and mortal agony, she forced her essence to overload. The golden siphons reversed. Stolen energy from 2 centuries surged backward like a tidal wave. Lyra's form dissolved into white light, her sacrifice severing the parasitic link that had kept the gods immortal. The transformation was horrific. Without the human spark to sustain them, the gods withered. Malachor's porcelain skin sagged and yellowed, turning translucent in seconds. His stature shrank as ancient bones groaned under the weight of gravity, his golden eyes dimming into the milky cataracts of a frightened old man. Around him, the other divine beings shriveled into their brittle grey husks, their once unreachable majesty revealed as a stolen cloak finally snatched away. They were not masters, but cosmic paupers who had lost their horde. Elias scrambled to the communication array, his hands flying across the ancient controls. He didn't send a declaration of war. He opened a window. Across every holographic screen in the Golden Age, the image of the withered, trembling High Inquisitor was broadcast. He showed the world the parasites in their true state. He told the people that the spark was not a gift to be granted, but the inherent right of every soul to dream, to fail, and to evolve. The reaction was a profound, collective awakening. The fear that had paralyzed humanity for generations evaporated, replaced by a realization of their own power. The remaining gods scrambled toward their starships. Their once proud vessels looked like rusted escape pods as they fled into the black void, leaving behind a world that was suddenly beautifully quiet. Weeks later, Elias stood on a windswept hill by a simple stone marker he had carved for his father. The world was messy, the lights flickered and the rain was cold. But as he watched survivors in the valley rebuilding, he saw a fire in their eyes that no decree could extinguish. The world was no longer a gilded cage, it was a workshop. The 200-year mistake wasn't a failure of human nature, but the arrogant belief of the gods that they could ever truly cage a human spirit designed to touch the stars. Humanity was finally free to write its own destiny among the constellations.